Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. There is a forest where the trees never quite stop watching. In the daylight it looks almost ordinary. Sunlight filters through layered leaves. The trunks rise like pillars, and birds flicker from branch to branch. But if you stand very still, if you close your eyes and listen, you will feel it. A faint awareness in the roots and bark, as if 1,000 small breaths are being held at once. This is the forest of 1,000,000 eyes. The villagers did not say its name after dark. They called it simply the deep woods or the old place or the trees beyond the shrine. To some it was sacred, to others dangerous. But to those who remembered the oldest stories, it was something else entirely. A place watched over by Kodama, the spirits of the trees. Aiko had grown up at the edge of that forest. Her house sat on a small hill, where the village road ended and the earth sloped down into shadows. From her bedroom window, she could see the faint line where farmland turned to wild, where neat rows of rice and vegetables stopped, and the darker, thicker green began. During the day, the forest seemed calm enough. She could hear woodpeckers tapping, cicadas buzzing, the rustle of boars moving somewhere deep inside. But at night, with the lanterns dim and the wind traveling in long, low sighs, the tree line became a wall that looked back. As a child, she would stand at the window and squint into the dark, certain she could see glints of light between the trunks, tiny reflections like fireflies that never moved. Eyes, she would whisper to herself. Their eyes. Most nights, she would crawl back under her blanket and pretend not to care. But the forest had a way of slipping into her dreams. Tall, silent trunks, moss like a sleeping carpet, and somewhere, just out of sight, something listening. When she was very small, she had asked her grandmother about it. "Oba-chan," she'd said, tugging at the soft sleeve of the old woman's kimono. "Why does the forest look at us at night?" Her grandmother had chuckled, her face folding into warm lines. "Ah, so you've noticed," she'd replied. "The trees are full of spirits, Aiko-chan. They watch to see if we remember how to be gentle." Gentle? Aiko had scrunched her nose. Gentle with what? With everything, her grandmother had answered. With the earth, with the trees, with each other. Kodama do not speak with words. They remember, they notice, they carry stories in their bark. Aiko had thought about that for days. Now she was older, no longer a little child, but not quite grown. Her hands were strong from helping with the fields, and her hair was long enough to tie back with a single ribbon. Still, when the wind came from the forest at night, carrying the cool smell of moss and river stone, she felt a familiar shiver. It was the feeling of being seen. The trouble began on a day that looked, at first, like any other. The sun rose pale behind a veil of thin clouds. The air was damp with the promise of rain that never quite arrived. Aiko woke early, tied her hair, and went out with her father to help clear a narrow path that ran along the border between their fields and the forest. "It's overgrown," her father said, lifting his sickle. "If we let the grass take it, we'll lose the boundary altogether. And then the roots will wander where they like." Aiko smiled faintly. And we can't have wandering roots. Exactly, her father replied, though he did not smile back. He was not afraid of the forest, but he respected it in a quiet, rigid way, the way he respected storms and mountains. We keep our path clear. We keep our distance. That is how it's always been. They worked side by side for a while, cutting back tall grasses, pulling away creeping vines that threatened to climb over the worn boundary stones. The forest loomed just beyond, its shadows darker in the morning light than they would be at noon. Aiko paused to catch her breath. Her gaze wandered between the trees. There, just beyond the first line of trunks, stood an older tree than the rest. Its bark was thick and deeply grooved, its roots knotted and half exposed like the fingers of a sleeping giant. Tangled moss draped from its branches, and the hollow at its base was dark enough to hide a person. It had always been there as long as Aiko could remember. She had named it the listening tree when she was small. Now, as she watched, a faint flicker appeared in that hollow. A small, round light, not bright like a flame, but soft, like the reflection of a lantern on still water. Aiko froze. "Father," she said quietly, "do you see that?" "See what?" He didn't look up, still focusing on the stubborn root he was trying to pry from the edge of the path. "In the hollow of that big tree," Aiko said, "there's a light." When she blinked, it was gone. The hollow was just a shadow again. "Maybe a firefly," her father said, finally glancing up. His eyes passed over the hollow without changing. "They like to hide in dark places. Don't get distracted, Aiko. We have a lot to clear before midday." She nodded, but as she turned back to the grass, she could not shake the sensation that someone, something, inside that old tree had met her gaze just for a heartbeat. By noon they had finished their work. The path that edged the forest was visible again, a narrow ribbon of packed earth winding between stone markers, its surface scattered with fallen leaves. Aiko's muscles ached pleasantly, her palms sore from the handle of the sickle. Her father straightened, stretching his back. "That's enough for today," he said. "We'll leave the rest until after the harvest. The trees can keep their secrets until then." He turned toward the house. Aiko hesitated. "I'll be there soon," she called. "I just want to check something." Her father paused. "Don't go into the forest." "I won't," she replied. He studied her a moment longer, then nodded and walked away. Aiko waited until his footsteps faded. Then she set down her tools and stepped closer to the edge of the trees. The listening tree loomed before her, its hollow still as dark as ink. She stopped just short of the first root. The air felt cooler here, even though the sun was still high. Sounds from the village, voices, tools, distant laughter, faded, replaced by the layered hush of leaves and distant birds. "Hello?" Aiko said quietly, feeling a little foolish. "I saw you earlier, I think." A breeze stirred. Leaves rustled overhead. She waited. Nothing happened. She exhaled slowly, half disappointed, half relieved. "Maybe I imagined it," she murmured. Then, from the depth of the hollow, something moved. A faint glimmer appeared. A tiny, floating light, no bigger than a plum blossom. It hovered just inside the darkness, trembling softly like a nervous breath. Aiko's heart stuttered. Her grandmother's stories flooded back to her. Kodama sometimes appeared as small orbs of light, she had said. Echoes of the trees themselves. Watching. Remembering. Aiko's throat was dry. Are you a Kodama? The light quivered. Then it drifted closer. She gasped and took a step back, nearly stumbling over the boundary stone. The light stopped. For a long moment, they simply regarded one another. A girl at the edge of the human world, and a small, patient presence at the edge of another. I'm Aiko, she whispered. My grandmother told me about you, about watchers in the trees. The light brightened slightly, like an ember fed with air. Something in Aiko's chest softened. I've seen you before, I think, she continued. When I was little, at night, I used to think the forest had eyes. The light flickered again, felt like a nod. She smiled without meaning to. Suddenly, behind her, someone shouted, Aiko! She jumped, the moment shattering like thin glass. The light darted back into the hollow, vanishing in an instant. Aiko spun around. Her younger cousin Haru was jogging up the path, waving a hand. Aiko, your grandmother's looking for you. She says lunch is getting cold. Aiko's heart was still beating fast. She glanced back at the listening tree. The hollow was just a shadow again. I'm coming, she said softly. As they walked away, she couldn't help glancing back one more time. Just for an instant, hidden between the shadows and the moss, she thought she saw not one light, but several. Tiny, patient glimmers waiting, a forest of eyes, watching in silence. That night, Aiko could not sleep. She lay on her futon, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow breath of the house. Her grandmother's gentle snore from the next room, the faint creak of wood as it settled, the soft swish of wind against the shutters. Beyond that, deeper, she heard the forest, not with her ears, but with something inside her. It was like standing at the edge of a crowd and feeling the weight of all those unspoken thoughts pressing in. She sensed trunks anchored deep in the earth, roots weaving beneath her home like quiet veins, branches cradling nests and moss and secrets, and somewhere among them little lights, floating and watching. Kodama. She sat up, pushing aside the blanket. Moonlight slid through the gap in the shutters, painting the floor in cold silver. The world outside was washed in pale light. Rooftops, fields, the dark line of the forest. The listening tree stood like a shadow among shadows. Aiko hesitated. Then she rose, moving as quietly as she could. She slipped on her thin sandals, pulled a light shawl over her shoulders, and crept outside. The air was cooler than she expected. She hugged the shawl close and walked down the familiar path toward the field's edge. The closer she came to the forest, the stronger the sensation grew. A sort of humming under her skin, as if the air were thick with unspoken words. She stopped at the boundary stone. Hello again, she whispered. The forest did not respond with sound. It responded with stillness. The wind seemed to pause. The cicadas quieted. Even the distant river hushed, its constant rush softening to a muffled murmur. Aiko looked at the listening tree. A light appeared in its hollow. Then another, and another. One by one, tiny orbs of pale, distant light blinked into being along its bark, along the roots, between the knots and cracks, like stars awakening on the surface of living wood. Aiko's breath caught. The tree was watching. No, she realized with a shiver. It was not just the tree. Beyond it, deeper into the forest, small glimmers stirred among the trunks. Faint at first, then clearer, like a constellation slowly deciding to reveal itself. A million eyes. She felt no malice in them, only attention, and something else, worry, a tremor at the edges of their quiet regard. "What's wrong?" Aiko asked softly. A breeze whispered through the leaves, carrying with it a feeling. Not a word, but an impression. Unrest, disturbance, a slow ache. She frowned. "Is something hurting you?" The lights flickered, and Aiko, standing there in her sandals at the edge of the human world, realized something she had never truly understood. The forest was not simply watching. It was waiting for what she did not yet know. But as the moon climbed higher and the lights watched her with silent, ancient patience, she felt the first delicate thread of a bond forming between a girl who had always felt eyes in the shadows and the Kodama who had always been there unseen, watching her grow. Somewhere deep within the forest, a branch snapped, sharp and sudden. The lights dimmed all at once. Aiko flinched, heart racing. From beyond the first line of trees, a new presence began to stir, heavier, rougher, like something walking where it had no right to walk. The Kodama's glow tightened, like a breath held in fear. Aiko swallowed. "Who is there?" she whispered into the dark. No answer came, but the forest of a million eyes had shifted. And for the first time, Aiko understood that being watched did not always mean being alone. Sometimes it meant being called. The night pressed closer around her, full of unasked questions and unseen shapes, and high above, the moon's pale light rested on her shoulders like a hand. The watchers were not the only ones awake. The night after Aiko first saw the Kodama lights, she could barely think of anything else. Their pale glimmers hovered behind her thoughts like floating lanterns. Every time she blinked, she saw them quiet, patient, watching. The next morning, clouds drifted low and heavy across the sky. A thin veil of fog wound through the village, softening the edges of rooftops and blurring the distant mountains. It was the kind of morning where sound felt muffled, where footsteps on dirt made no echo. Aiko sat at the low table with her grandmother and father, stirring miso soup without appetite. The conversation around her felt distant, muted by the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. Her grandmother watched her closely. "You didn't sleep," she said. Aiko hesitated. She wasn't sure how much to say, not because she doubted her grandmother, but because she didn't know how to explain the weight of the night's encounter. "I heard the forest," Aiko finally whispered. Her father stiffened. He set down his chopsticks with a faint clack. "The forest speaks to no one," he said sharply. Aiko looked down. "I know, but I saw something. Last night, lights, in the hollow of the listening tree." Her father's expression hardened. You shouldn't be near that tree after dark. It wasn't dangerous, Aiko said quietly. It was watching and waiting. Her grandmother's eyes softened, though shadows flickered behind them. You saw Kodama, she said gently. Aiko nodded. Her father exhaled long through his nose. Kodama don't show themselves without reason. Be careful, Aiko. The warning carried something like fear, rare in her father's voice. But it was too late for fear now. Something had begun. Later that morning, Aiko stood outside, staring toward the forest. Mist drifted between the trees like pale spirits wandering slow paths. The listening trees' branches swayed, though the wind was still. Something was happening there, and she felt, deep in her ribs under her skin, that she was meant to see it. She tightened her obi and stepped forward. As she approached the boundary stones, the air cooled noticeably. The mist thinned, clearing just enough to reveal the faint glow of Kodama lights blinking between the trunks. Not fearful, inviting. Aiko placed one foot beside the boundary stone. She felt it immediately, a shift, as though the forest inhaled sharply. The leaves above rustled, bending slightly toward her. Her heart pounded. May I come in? She whispered. The Kodama lights flickered in what almost felt like approval. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. The forest watches to see if we remember how to be gentle. Aiko closed her eyes, bowed deeply toward the trees, and stepped past the boundary. The air inside the forest felt like an entirely different world. Cooler, denser, and alive. Birdsong echoed in distant layers, overlapping with soft, low hums she couldn't identify. Dew clung to every leaf, dripping rhythmically to the moss below. Ferns rustled as she passed, not recoiling, but turning slightly toward her as though curious. Aiko walked slowly, careful not to press too hard on the earth. Every step felt like an offering. Kodama? She whispered. Several faint lights appeared around her, some hovering near roots, others drifting near branches. They lit a winding path deeper into the forest. Aiko followed. The deeper she walked, the more the forest changed. The trunks grew wider, older, taller, trees that felt like ancient guardians. Roots twisted over each other like giant serpents curled in sleep. Moss climbed over fallen logs in brilliant green waves. Aiko paused often, overwhelmed by the sense of presence. Not danger, not malice, but attention, as though the entire forest knew she was there, as though it had been waiting for her for a very long time. She reached a clearing she had never seen before. The trees here bent in a perfect circle, forming a natural ring around a shallow pool. The water was still, too still, like polished glass. Above, the canopy arched inward, filtering sunlight into soft, shifting patterns. Dozens of Kodama lights floated above the pool, their reflections perfectly mirroring them below. Aiko's breath caught. She felt like she had stepped into a shrine hidden from the world. Aside, clearing a path. Aiko stepped closer cautiously. The water was so clear that she could see pebbles at the bottom. She leaned forward, and the reflection staring back at her was not her own. Aiko gasped and stumbled backward, nearly falling. The girl in the water looked exactly like her. Same hair, same face, same eyes, but older, wiser, with markings like silver branches glowing faintly across her cheeks. Aiko's reflection whispered something she could not hear. Then the water stilled, returning to normal. Aiko pressed a hand to her chest. What was that? A Kodama floated closer, trembling with soft urgency. It nudged the air toward her, gesturing deeper into the woods. You want me to follow? Aiko asked. The light flickered brightly. Something was calling her further in. She swallowed hard, strengthened her resolve, and took her first step deeper into the unknown. Her sandal touched the moss. The earth shook. A soft tremor rolled through the ground, like a giant shifting its weight beneath the soil. Birds took off from branches in a flurry. Leaves shivered violently. The Kodama lights scattered upward in alarm. Aiko froze. What was that? The tremor returned stronger. Then came the roar. Low, deep, not human, not natural. It echoed through the trees, shaking bark loose, sending ripples across the pool. Aiko's blood ran cold. From the shadows of the deeper forest, something massive stirred. Branches snapped. Heavy footsteps pressed into the earth. The Kodama lights clustered around Aiko protectively, forming a loose circle. What is coming? Aiko whispered, voice barely audible. The Kodama lights dimmed in fear. A presence emerged, slow, immense, ancient. Aiko could not see its full shape yet, only its silhouette between the trunks, towering, twisted, its form outlined by faint green luminescence. The forest groaned under its weight. The air turned colder. Aiko stumbled back, heart racing. What are you? The great shape paused. Then, one enormous eye opened, glowing, green, unblinking, and fixed directly on her. The Kodama around her trembled. Aiko whispered, breath shaking, "You're not a Kodama." The creature stepped forward with thunderous weight, and the forest of a million eyes closed in around her. Aiko ran harder, her breath burning in her throat. The masked figure's grip was surprisingly strong as they wove through the forest with quick, sure steps. The Kodama lights illuminated the twisting path ahead like fallen stars guiding the way. Behind them, the guardian roared again, louder, closer. The ground trembled violently as its colossal roots slammed into the soil. Please, Aiko gasped. Tell me what it wants. It wants balance, the masked figure said sharply. And you have disturbed it. Aiko stumbled over a rising root. The masked figure steadied her instantly. What did I do? I didn't touch anything. You entered, the figure said. For the first time in decades, a human crossed the boundary. The guardian answers such things. Aiko swallowed hard. So it wants to drive me out? The forest shook with another thunderous impact. No, the figure said. It wants to judge you. Aiko's breath froze. Judge her? For what? The masked figure suddenly stopped. Aiko nearly collided with them. Why? Silence, the figure whispered. They had reached a massive cedar tree, older than all the others, its trunk thicker than a small house, its roots curling like great serpents around a deep hollow beneath. The Kodama converged around it, trembling in soft circles. Aiko sensed it too, a well of ancient presence, a pulse of old knowledge, a waiting calm. This way, the figure said, dropping to their knees. They guided Aiko beneath the roots into the hidden hollow. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of rich earth. Soft light seeped through cracks in the trunk, forming patterns like falling moonbeams. Aiko crawled inside beside the figure. The Kodama slipped in after them, filling the space with soft glows. Outside, the earth shook again as the guardian approached. Its massive footfalls paused directly above them. The shadow of its monstrous form stretched across the hollow like a living eclipse. Aiko clutched her shawl. Her breath barely moved. The ground creaked under the guardian's enormous weight. Then, it lowered its head. Through a narrow crack in the wood, Aiko could see the eye, that terrible, glowing eye, pass slowly across their hiding place. She held her eeth. She felt its gaze searching the earth, scanning the roots, the hollow, the shadows, searching for her. But the Kodama lights brightened softly, like a veil of fireflies hiding the hollow in shimmering mist. The guardian recoiled, confused. It let out a frustrated, cracking groan, half tree, half beast. Then it stomped away, its heavy form shuddering through the forest as it retreated into deeper shadows. The trembling ground calmed. Aiko exhaled at last. The masked figure sat back, placing a hand on one of the roots. "We are safe. For now." Aiko swallowed. What was that thing? Why does the forest have a monster like that? Because the forest remembers, the figure said. Every wound, every cut, every betrayal. The guardian was once gentle, but centuries of broken soil and fallen trees have twisted it. Aiko stared at them. Into that. The figure nodded. Guardians absorb the forest's pain. They become the weight of every forgotten promise. Aiko looked down, guilt twisting her stomach. So it hates humans. No, the figure corrected. It fears them. The idea stunned her. Fear? That enormous creature? The masked figure continued, their voice low. Kodama watch. Guardians protect. But humans, they sighed softly. Humans often destroy without seeing what they break. Aiko looked away. Her throat tightened. I'm not here to destroy anything. I know, the figure said. That is why the Kodama led you here. But the guardian does not see what they see. Aiko took a slow breath. Then why did the Kodama bring me deeper into the forest? Why show me that pool? That reflection? The masked figure was quiet for a long time. Finally, they said, because the forest has chosen you for something. Aiko blinked. Chosen me? The figure tapped the cedar trunk gently with their knuckles. You felt it last night. The stirring. The watching. Something in this forest is shifting, and the Kodama believe you are part of that shift. But why? Aiko whispered. I'm just me. The masked figure tilted their head. Are you so certain? Aiko frowned. The figure reached into their robe and removed a small, polished disc, a mirror of obsidian framed with twisted vine-like metal. You saw your reflection at the pool, they said. What you saw was not a mistake. Aiko's heart beat faster. What was it? A possibility, the Yor said. A path. A self you might become. Aiko shook her head. That's impossible. But the masked figure leaned closer, lowering their voice to a whisper that felt ancient. In the deepest forests, nothing is impossible. Aiko stared at the dark mirror. Somewhere within its glossy surface, she felt the faintest shimmer, as if a distant version of herself gazed back. She looked up at the figure. Who are you? I am a keeper, they said. One who listens when the trees speak. One who remembers the old ways. Aiko swallowed. So, you protect the Kodama? No, the figure said. They do not need protection. I protect balance. Aiko hesitated before asking, and what happens now? The keeper stood slowly, brushing dirt from their robes. Now, they said, you choose. Aiko's breath stilled. Choose what? The keeper extended a hand toward the deeper part of the forest, a place where shadows thickened and a faint humming echoed like distant drums. You may leave the forest, the keeper said. The guardian will let you go if you do not return. Aiko's chest tightened. Or, the keeper continued, you may follow the path the Kodama showed you, deeper, toward the heart of what stirs beneath the roots. Aiko trembled. And what is that? The keeper's mask tilted upward, as though listening to something far away. An old sorrow, they whispered. One that has awakened. The leaves overhead rustled violently, though no wind blew. The keeper turned to Aiko. If you step forward, there will be no turning back. The Kodama lights hovered around Aiko's shoulders, trembling, worried, waiting. Aiko looked at the forest path, at the shadows that seemed to breathe, at the silent eyes of the Kodama, at the keeper's extended hand. Her heart pounded. She whispered to herself, I've always felt you watching me. She stepped forward, one foot onto the moss, one breath into the deeper dark. The Kodama glowed in relief. The keeper nodded once, and the forest, the entire forest, seemed to exhale. Aiko looked ahead. Somewhere in the far dark, something shifted, something ancient, something wounded, something calling her by name. She swallowed. I'm ready. The keeper placed a hand over her heart. The forest hopes so, they whispered. Aiko drew a breath, steady and full. Then she walked deeper into the forest of a million eyes. Aiko followed the keeper deeper into the forest, the Kodama drifting behind them in a loose cluster of pale lights. The air grew heavier, humid with the scent of moss and ancient bark. Every root hummed faintly beneath her feet, as if energy pulsed through the earth like blood. The deeper they walked, the dimmer the sunlight became. Branches overhead thickened, knitting together into a canopy that shut out the sky. What little light reached them shimmered in soft emerald shades. Aiko felt watched, but not with alarm. Felt like the forest was evaluating her, weighing her. The keeper walked steadily, their wooden mask tilted slightly up as though listening to a distant voice. Where are we going? Aiko whispered. To the place the Kodama have shown you, the keeper said softly. To the place where balance first broke. The Kodama lights flickered sadly. Aiko swallowed. Is that where the creature came from? That guardian? No, the keeper said. The guardian protects what is broken. But what lies beneath the roots? That is something different. Aiko felt a chill travel across her arms. Something older? She asked. The keeper nodded once. Older than the guardian. Older than the forest as you know it. Older than the names humans once carved into wood and stone. Aiko looked ahead uneasily. An ancient sorrow, the keeper had said. They reached a narrow ravine carved deep into the forest floor. Thick roots webbed across its walls like the ribs of a giant creature. The air that drifted up from below was cool and damp, carrying a faint metallic scent. Aiko shivered. What is this place? The keeper crouched at the edge and ran their fingers along the roots. A wound, they murmured. A wound so deep the forest still bleeds through it. Aiko peered over the edge. Far below, she saw a faint red glow, like embers hidden beneath ash. Slow, heavy, like the pulse of the earth itself. Aiko's breath hitched. Is that? Yes, the keeper said. The heart. Aiko stepped back instinctively. It's alive. It is memory, the keeper said. Memory that has taken shape. When humans wounded the forest long ago, cut what should not be cut, burned what should not be burned, their actions awakened something. Something that had slept peacefully for centuries. Aiko felt guilt coil inside her chest. What awakened? The pain, the keeper said simply. The Kodama lights dimmed. Aiko's heart pounded. And I'm supposed to do something about this? Why me? I'm no priestess, no seer. I don't have any special. You came, the keeper interrupted softly. You listened. You bowed. Aiko blinked. What? The keeper pointed at her chest. The forest does not choose by power. It chooses by heart. Aiko opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the forest trembled. Not like before. Not like when the guardian approached. This was deeper, older. A slow, rolling quake that traveled up through the roots, into the earth, into her bones. Aiko gasped and grabbed the keeper's arm. What's happening? The keeper lifted their head. It senses you. Aiko felt her throat tighten. The heart. Yes, the keeper whispered. It has not felt a human approach in many decades. It wonders if you have come to hurt it or heal it. The trembling slowed, then stopped. Aiko breathed shakily. How do I heal a forest's heart? You do not, the keeper said gently. But you can listen to it. And sometimes, that is enough. The Kodama drifted downward, circling the ravine entrance with small rings of light. The keeper motioned toward a thick root leading downward like a natural staircase. Go, they said. It wants to show you its truth. Aiko stared into the glowing ravine, her pulse quickening. She looked at the keeper. You aren't coming with me? The keeper's mask tilted. This is not my path. Aiko swallowed, then nodded. She gripped the root, lowered herself into the ravine, and began her descent. The deeper she climbed, the warmer the air became. The humidity thickened. The red glow intensified. Sweat beaded on her forehead. When her feet reached the ravine floor, she found herself standing before an enormous tangle of roots twisted into what looked like a cage. Within it pulsed a massive orb of reddish gold light, beating gently like a sleeping heart. Aiko approached slowly. The closer she came, the more vivid her senses became. The heartbeat vibrated through the earth. The air hummed like a distant chant. Her own heart seemed to match its rhythm, slow and heavy. Aiko whispered, "Hello." The heart pulsed. A wave of warmth washed over her. Then, a voice filled her mind. Not spoken, not human. A feeling, a memory, fire, screaming trees, axes biting into sacred bark, roots torn from the earth, smoke rising where ancient groves once stood. Aiko cried out and fell to her knees, clutching her head. Images flooded her vision. Forests burning in a storm of sparks, Kodama fleeing in terror, the guardian roaring in agony as the old woods died around it. She felt their pain, not as a story, but as something living. The heart's sorrow. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered shakily. "I'm so sorry." The heart softened its glow. The pain faded. Aiko wiped her tears with trembling hands. "Is this why you're hurting? Why the guardian is twisted?" The heart pulsed once. A weak, tired yes. Aiko reached out and gently touched one of the roots forming its cage. "I don't know how to fix what humans broke," she whispered. "But I'm here. I'm listening. If there's anything I can do, I want to help." The heart flared. A gentle warmth seeped into her hand. Then a second wave, stronger, washed through her entire body. She gasped as a soft red-gold light wrapped around her like flowing silk. Her vision blurred, and suddenly she was no longer in the ravine. She stood in the middle of the forest, but it was not the forest she knew. The trees were taller. The air was brighter. The Kodama danced freely like drifting pollen. This was the past. A time before the wound. A hum filled the air. A peaceful, rhythmic thrum like hundreds of distant drums beating in harmony. Aiko walked forward. She saw the forest alive, vibrant, untouched. The guardian appeared, but not twisted and monstrous. It was gentle, beautiful, a creature formed from ancient cedar and sunlight, eyes glowing with serene green warmth. It watched over the Kodama lovingly, guiding them like a shepherd watching over their flock. Aiko placed a hand on her chest. "So this is what you were." The vision shifted. Humans entered the forest. Children ran and laughed through the trees. Old women placed offerings at the roots. Hunters bowed before taking only what they needed. Harmony, then darkness. A group of men hacked at a sacred grove. Flames consumed the underbrush. The Kodama screamed, their lights flickering violently. The guardian roared, but not in anger. In grief. The harmony shattered. Aiko squeezed her eyes shut as the agony washed over her. A final image surfaced. The heart dimming, cracking, as pain seeped into the roots. Then the vision dissolved. Aiko found herself back in the ravine, kneeling before the glowing heart. Pulsed weakly now like a tired breath. Aiko pressed her palm to her chest. You showed me. The heart pulsed. Aiko whispered, tears in her eyes. You want harmony back. The heart glowed faintly. Aiko placed both hands on the root cage. I'll help you. I'll do everything I can. The heart brightened. But then, something shifted above. A low growl echoed through the ravine. Aiko looked up. Her blood ran cold. The guardian stood at the ravine's edge, massive form silhouetted by the dim forest light. Its green eye glowed fiercely. It had found her. The Kodama shrieked in tiny, trembling lights. Aiko stood slowly, breath shaking. The guardian stepped onto the root stairs, heavy, determined. The earth shook. The heart pulsed in alarm. Aiko clenched her fists. You're hurting, she whispered to the forest above. But I'm not your enemy, the guardian roared, and the ravine trembled like a living thing. The keeper's voice rang out distantly from above. Aiko, the heart has chosen you, but the guardian has not. Aiko stepped between the heart and the descending guardian. The forest lights flickered. I'm not running, she whispered. Her voice did not shake. She lifted her chin and faced the massive creature head-on. Because I am not afraid of you. The guardian paused. Its enormous eye blinked. Once, then twice. The ground shook again, but not in anger. In hesitation. Aiko placed a hand over her heart. Let me prove it. The ravine held its breath. And the guardian, ancient and tormented, took one step closer. The guardian's enormous shadow descended into the ravine, swallowing what little light remained. Aiko stood motionless, her heart pounding but her stance steady. She did not step back. She did not flinch. The Kodama clustered tightly behind her, their trembling lights flickering like frightened fireflies. The guardian reached the ravine floor, its massive cedar limbs gripping the earth with a shudder. Its single glowing eye locked onto Aiko with an intensity that made the air heavy. The creature's presence was overwhelming. Ancient, wounded, powerful enough to crush the ravine with a single step. Still, Aiko lifted her chin. I'm not running, she whispered again. The guardian growled. A deep, resonant sound that vibrated the stones beneath her feet. But beneath its fury, Aiko sensed something else. Fear, confusion, pain. The heart pulsed behind her, glowing softly in the root cage as if silently urging her forward. Aiko raised a trembling hand, palm open. I know you're hurting. The guardian stiffened. I saw what happened, she continued. I saw the forest before the wound. I saw the grove burned. I saw the Kodama scream. I saw you break. The guardian let out a strangled cry, half roar, half groan. Its cedar limbs curling inward as if trying to shield itself from memory. Aiko's eyes filled with tears. You've been carrying this pain for centuries. Alone. The monster stilled completely. The Kodama behind Aiko dimmed, their lights soft and sorrowful. Aiko took one step forward. You protect the forest. But who protects you? The guardian recoiled in surprise, roots tightening around the ravine walls. You don't have to fear me, Aiko whispered. I came here because the heart called me, because the forest called me. I'm not here to take anything, only to listen. The guardian's eye flickered. Then, it lowered its massive head until its enormous face hovered just a breath away from Aiko. Its eye, bright green and ancient as moss-covered mountains, stared directly into hers. Aiko's breath hitched. This was the moment, the forest's judgment, the trial of 100 eyes. Though there was only one eye before her, Aiko felt the presence of countless Kodama watching from the shadows above. Hundreds, thousands. Tiny silent witnesses to a moment that had not occurred in generations. The keeper's voice echoed faintly from above. "Do not look away." Aiko didn't. She met the guardian's gaze and allowed it to search her. Not her thoughts, not her memories, but something deeper. Her intent, her heart, her fear, her sorrow, her resolve. The green eye brightened, blazing like a lantern. Aiko felt the sensation of roots spreading across her thoughts, searching gently, curiously, cautiously. The guardian pressed further, reaching into her grief, her loneliness, her longing to belong, and her quiet, unspoken hope. The Kodama, sensing the shift, slowly brightened. The guardian's eye dimmed slightly. Then, to Aiko's shock, it lowered its massive head even further, until its wooden brow nearly touched the earth at her feet. Aiko gasped. It was bowing. The forest trembled, not with anger, but with relief. A wave of warm energy rippled outward from the heart, and the Kodama's lights burst into bright, shimmering white. The trial was over. Aiko had passed. The guardian stepped back, its colossal frame shifting in a way that almost resembled respect. Its cedar limbs curled inward as if giving her space. The ravine seemed to inhale with renewed calm. Aiko turned back toward the heart. It pulsed with a gentle golden glow. "What now?" she whispered. The answer came not in words, but in feeling and invitation. The heart glowed brighter. The keeper's voice drifted down from above. "It wants you to complete the healing." Aiko approached the heart again. The root cage shifted subtly, widening just enough to let her place both hands fully upon it. Warmth flooded her arms, flowing into her chest. This time, instead of sorrow, she felt something different. Trust. The heart trusted her. Aiko closed her eyes and listened. She didn't know what she was listening for, only that the forest would guide her. The heart pulsed. Her breathing slowed. Aiko felt her heartbeat syncing with its rhythm. Slow, steady, deep. The Kodama floated in a circle, their lights swirling like drifting petals. Aiko whispered, "Show me what you need." Light surged. Her breath caught, and suddenly she was not standing in the ravine anymore. Aiko stood in a vast void made of roots and shimmering golden light. The heart appeared for her, not as an orb, but as a luminous figure woven from branches and memories. Its voice was not a voice at all, but a resonance that echoed through her core. "The forest survives, but it is wounded." Aiko swallowed. "I know. Balance must be restored." Aiko nodded. "Tell me how." The heart extended a tendril of light and pressed it gently to her forehead. A vision unfurled, a hidden chamber deep beneath the oldest cedar, a shrine older than history, a pool of memory where the Kodama were first born. A broken seal, cracked, dim, barely intact. Aiko gasped. That's what's been bleeding pain into the forest, isn't it? Yes. Can it be repaired? The heart paused for a long moment. Only by one who has seen our sorrow and still chooses to stay. Aiko felt her body go still. Me? You? Her knees trembled. Why me? The heart's glow softened. Because you listen. Aiko pressed a hand over her heart. I'll do it, she whispered. She felt the heart smile, warm, grateful, ancient. Then you will need a guide. Aiko frowned. A guide. Roots shifted beneath her feet. A shadow stepped forward. A familiar one. The guardian. But not the monstrous version she had seen. This was the guardian she had glimpsed in the past. Gentle, luminous. Its cedar body shaped by light instead of pain. Aiko felt tears fill her eyes. You! The guardian lowered its head to her. Aiko placed her hand against its wooden cheek. It leaned gently into her touch, the gesture so soft, so surprisingly tender that Aiko's chest ached. He will lead you, the heart said. To where? Aiko asked. The heart pulsed one last time, bright and resonant. To the place where the forest was born. Aiko opened her eyes, and she was back in the ravine. The heart glowed behind her. The guardian stood before her, and the keeper waited above. Aiko exhaled. I'm ready. The guardian lowered itself so she could climb onto its cedar back. Aiko grasped one of its thick branches, pulled herself up, and settled into the cradle of its wooden limbs. The Kodama gathered around her in a swirling ring of light. The keeper nodded slowly. It begins. The guardian roared, not in fear, not in anger, but in purpose. It rose. The ravine trembled. The forest above shook. And Aiko held on tightly as the guardian carried her toward the ancient heart of the forest of a million eyes, where fate waited in the dark. The guardian moved like a living mountain beneath Aiko, its cedar limbs rising and falling with heavy, deliberate steps. From her place cradled in its branches, she could feel the rhythm of its movements through her entire body. A slow, grounding sway, like the breathing of the forest itself. Above them, the canopy parted and closed in a shifting dance of branches and leaves. Threads of moonlight and starlight slipped through, painting the guardian's bark with pale silver. Around them, hundreds of Kodama floated as they traveled, tiny, glowing forms drifting between the trunks like a procession of quiet stars. They did not chatter, did not sing. They watched. They waited. The keeper walked alongside the guardian for a time, their wooden mask tilted slightly toward Aiko. From this point, they said, voice soft as moss, the path will grow quieter. Few have seen what you are about to see. Aiko tightened her fingers slightly around the branch she held. Will you come with us? The keeper shook their head slowly. My duty is to listen to the trees, to carry their words to the edge of the human world. But where you are going, they glanced ahead into the deeper darkness. That is a place for those who stand with one foot in both worlds. Aiko swallowed. I'm not sure I'm that person. The keeper's voice was calm. You climbed down into the wound. You spoke with the heart. You faced the guardian and did not turn away. Their head tilted, the mask's hollow eyes reflecting a faint glimmer of Kodama light. You have already been that person for some time. Aiko felt her cheeks warm. She looked ahead rather than answer, letting the forest wash past her. Will I see you again? She asked quietly. The keeper paused, listening to a wind that did not move the leaves. If the forest wills it, they replied, and if you listen when it calls. They reached out and placed a hand on the guardian's bark, a gesture of both farewell and blessing. The massive creature inclined its head in acknowledgement. Then the keeper stepped aside, disappearing between two ancient trunks so smoothly that Aiko could not tell when they vanished from sight. The forest grew quieter. The Kodama lights, however, brightened. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth.